All right, so the first question, whoever wants to start first, this is going to be the toughest question. I need you to spell and say your first and last name for me, please.
Okay, Tanya Parker, TonyaParker.
Melanie Doherty, MElanie Doherty.
Of course, I have to have the longest name, Brandy Simpson Miller, Brandy BRANDI, SIMPSONMILLER.
All right, perfect. And then just one more question I have for you all before we jump into things. Can you just tell me your title, or how would you like for it to appear in this web article?
Okay, I am the Chief Diversity Officer and the Director of the Lane Center for Social and Racial Equity.
And Ms. Doherty?
Yes, so I am Dr. Melanie Doherty, and I teach in the English department. And I'm also the principal investigator of the Crafting Democratic Futures Mellon Grant.
And I am a visiting assistant professor of history here at Wesleyan, and also the assistant director of the Lane Center for Social and Racial Equity.
Awesome. So that's just a perfect segue, just starting off, just giving just a general summary, and you can take as long as you would like to, and just explaining what the Lane Center for Social and Racial Equity is exactly.
Okay, so how do we want to start this, you guys? Like, want to talk about the specific center or how it came? I think, Mel, if you could start into it, and then I'll take it from there.
Sure. So the Lane Center for Social and Racial Equity is in part founded by the funding that we received from the Mellon Foundation Crafting Democratic Futures Project. I'll talk a little bit about the work we're doing with that particular grant. It's a 3-year grant. And one way to think about that grant is the work that we're beginning with that grant will become the ongoing work of the Equity Center going on into the future beyond the 3-year span of the grant. So a little history, the Crafting Democratic Futures Grant was started by Dr. Earl Lewis, and it is a $5 million Andrew W. Mellon Foundation grant that is being shared by 8 different colleges and universities across the country. And so Wesleyan is one of multiple schools that is involved in this the project. So Emory University is another school, Spelman, Rutgers University, Newark, and also Carnegie Mellon University, among others. And the grant project came out of a new center at the University of Michigan that Dr. Earl Lewis is heading, and that is the Center for Social Solutions. Part of the work of that center is to look at the history of slavery in the US and to think seriously on a broader scale about what racial reparations could mean for the US. So the goals of the grant are to look at colleges and universities as unique anchor institutions that can work with their local communities to really start a conversation about what racial reparations and racial repair means for the specific community, and then expanding that out into a broader national discussion. So when we say reparations, we are also talking about public apologies. We are looking at public monuments to make sure that we are commemorating sites of past racial violence and racial terror. So one of the sub-projects of the grant has been work with the Equal Justice Initiative. But I'll pause there for a minute, and I'll let Dean Parker talk a little bit more about the center.
Thank you, Mel, Dr. Doherty. Okay, so the center is actually a collaboration of the work that we've already been doing at Wesleyan. And when Dr. Doherty mentioned that conversations, that we're going to connect with the community with these conversations, we've been also doing work on our campus, and conversations under DID, diversity and inclusion discussions, has been foundational for the work that we've done to progress us, in the progress of where we are now. When I first came into my role 6 years ago, we needed something to bring us all together. And what we needed was to listen, to hear, to understand. And so Dr. Doherty and I were directors for the diversity and inclusion discussions. And the Lane Center for Social and Racial Equity is like a collaboration of that, because DID is also a part of it, because the Interactivity Foundation, which actually sponsored these conversations and got us started, trained us to train our students, which was already happening before I got here with first year students, but we expanded it to the whole college, like, come and let's talk, let's hear each other. Let's find out what's going on here and what we need to do to move forward. And we did the same now with this grant, the Mellon Foundation grant, with the community. So the Lane Center is like a bridge to us from Wesleyan into the larger community with our community partner, the Tubman Museum. And I will say this just for me, because I love the Tubman, I also have the history of working there as the former director of education. And so I understand that the work that the museum and the work that Wesleyan were doing made sense to be community partners. Okay, Brandy, anything you want to add?
Well, I'm the most junior partner in this in this endeavor, and I've got different roles. I think I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but I've got some different roles. And some of the things that I do is working directly with the community in terms of creating a repository of oral histories of some of the social and racial justice work that's been done in Macon over the years. I'm also doing some work in crafting a narrative of that history and how Wesleyan fits into that. But yeah, I don't want to go too far into that because I think you've got some other questions.
No, that's perfectly perfect. And thank you all so much for giving me that explanation, because I think like even just like reading the name, you're like, oh, this seems like this could be a lot to digest, but you all just broke it down very brilliantly. So, I mean, it's just a perfect segue to the next question. Of course, you all are working with a number of different community partners, but of course, we all know it's Black History Month right now, and the Tubman does have the Block the Hate exhibit that's up that people can go and see right now. And it was very interesting for me to go and see that, but also know that, you know, there's more that's in the woodworks going on. So how did the idea come about for you all to work with the Tubman in the first place?
Well, the parameters of the Crafting Democratic Futures grant ask that we have a community partner, right? So part of the work is really thinking about how, again, do colleges and universities really show a dedicated effort to work with the community. And so we thought a lot of our work is humanities-based, and we thought that the work of the Tubman very much aligns with many of the artists that we've had come to Wesleyan and many of the different projects that we do. And we also saw the Tubman as a wonderful site to host our community conversations. So again, the grant launched last year with a series of community conversations that were held at the Tubman, were also held on Zoom, and our last one was held here at Wesleyan. With the Tubman Museum, one of the projects that we're working on is the EJI initiative. But I'll backtrack just for a second to say that the outcome of the community conversations, we really wanted to be, as Dean Parker was saying, in listening mode, right, to the Macon community. We really wanted to say, if we were to create together a narrative and a sense of what are some focal points for racial repair in Macon, what could that look like? And so 4 points have emerged from these conversations: education reform, public policy, making hidden histories visible, which is in part what Dr. Miller is talking about too, with the oral histories and the recording of Macon stories, and then public arts and monuments, right? And so under the public arts and monuments subgroup, Professor Alexis Gregg has really spearheaded the EJI work and the Equal Justice Initiative work. Just if folks don't know, this is called the Community Remembrance Project, and it's tied to the National Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. But by doing work with the community to recognize and commemorate sites of, again, racial terror and lynching in Macon, we are able to bring one of those monuments to Macon. So we are working on that project right now. Actually, I have a meeting this afternoon at 2 to talk further with the EJI folks about that particular aspect of this project.
And I would just like to add to that one, Ye, the beauty of The Tubman being like our community partner as well. It's a neutral site, but then when you think Tubman and Tubman Museum and what it means to Macon, where it's centrally located in downtown Macon. And so all of the people who come together for these conversations so that we can put our work into action, we meet at a place where we have local government represented, local businesses, the school system, and I say school system, public school system. We have the universities and colleges represented. We have grassroots organizations represented, faith communities, cultural creators, just different people showing up because they care about racial repair in Macon. And this grant is allowing us to do that. And the Lane Center is like how we go out into the community representing the work that Wesleyan is doing. Because we don't just show up, oh, they're from Wesleyan. No, from the center, the Equity Center. And that Equity Center means that we are doing work not just on the campus, but in the community. So being visible and making sure that we are taking this work beyond even the 3 years of the grant. When the grant finishes up, we'll have a wonderful story to tell, but that's the foundation of the collaborative effort at that time. It continues.
I wasn't sure if there was anything you wanted to add, Ms. Miller, or no?
Well, I think I would like to add that I'm wearing my history educator hat. We were just at the Tubman Friday with my public history 358 class, and looking at the history of monuments in Macon and looking at the Block the Hate exhibit. And our students are really grappling with the history of Macon and some of these issues. And it's just wonderful to have the Tubman put that exhibit out there so that our students can engage with the community in this way. And so it's an amazing exhibit, and Jeff there has done a fantastic job with it.
Yes, and once again, another good segue to the next question and talking about the monument, because I'm working on a series of stories for Black History Month. And the thing that kind of came to mind for me for all across Central Georgia is uncovering Black history. There's a lot of Black history that we have in Central Georgia, a lot of Black history here in Macon that some folks don't even know about. And I think when it comes down to the lynchings, we've heard stories about it happening in the South, but everybody doesn't know about it, specifically happening here, in Bibb County. So if you all could just kind of talk about that process of getting a lynching monument here in Macon. I know it's a lot and it's not something that's not simple, but what does that process look like? And do you all have a timeline as to, when you would probably like for it to come to Macon?
Yeah, well, part of that work involves Professor Alexis Gregg, who's not with us right now. She's actually in Mexico on sabbatical doing some work in Mexico. But when she returns, she'll be able to speak to you in more detail about that. Mm-hmm. I will say one of the requirements, though, is true community involvement. And so EJI today, when we meet with them, part of what they're going to be determining is, do we have enough community members that are truly invested and involved in this? So one of the things that I will say is that folks who might be interested in participating and learning more about this could email us. Our email address is equitycenter@wesleyancollege.edu. That's one word. And we can connect them into our email list and see if they would, if they would like to come and join some of the EJI meetings. So it's still in process. And I don't have a strict timeline for you for that. But Alexis Gregg, when she returns at the end of March, we'll be able to speak to you.
Okay.
One of the other things I could say too, with the work of the grant, we are really thinking about our curriculum and thinking about our student body and our student population here. And folks don't know, but Wesleyan is majority students of color. It has been for the past few years. And our curriculum and the way that we approach these topics has become focus on racial justice and social equity truly has become a central focus of our curriculum. So one of the new courses that came about with this grant is called Writing for Equity. And I'm taking my students today to see the Block the Hate exhibit. And this is a creative writing class that's really thinking about storytelling. Storytelling is part of a commemorance project of really sort of commemorating the community and people. So the students will see that exhibit and will be writing about that. I've also had Storytellers Macon come and visit this class. And Storytellers Macon is going to be working with us and the Tubman to create some sites where folks in the community can create and record their own oral histories that tie into either their experiences at the Tubman over the years or their own personal experiences. So we're going to bring that to the community and make that very accessible for folks as well coming in April.
And in terms, if I might, in terms of hidden histories, that has a lot to do with the kind of work that I'm doing at the moment. One of the projects that we're working on is in the Piedmont in Jones County. And that was once a thriving community. And after the Depression in the 1930s, a lot of those farmers had to be relocated and was turned into a wildlife refuge. Oh, there are many graveyards up there with many, many unmarked graves of people of African descent. And so we are working to do research in the community about that, because a lot of those people actually migrated to Macon, and some of them have been made aware of some of their ancestors that are up there, and we want to continue that work and amplify it. Also, a discussion of the racial terrorism in that area is ongoing, and the beginnings of oral histories of that particular location to highlight some of those hidden histories in that area. So that's what we're all about here in terms of creating a repository here at Wesleyan that's going to be open and accessible to researchers and to the community, where they can learn about these histories of Black people in the area.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I just have a few more questions for you. With the Lane Center, I feel like you all are working on so much more than just that. So can you just talk about some of the other projects that y'all might be working on?
Okay, well, one of them involves our community center, our community partner, the Tubman. This Wednesday, I'll be at the Tubman Museum, Dr. Simpson Miller and I, for a blood drive. And this is also through the American Red Cross, because giving blood is just down across the board. It's always down, but it's down even more because of COVID and the pandemic. And so, and the need for the Black community to give, but to be aware. Last year, we started educating our students on our campus about the need to give, because we see that people of color, for whatever reason, apprehensive about giving or don't show up to some of the blood drives. And so partnering with the Red Cross and then partnering with the Tubman. So now our next, we had one in the fall that was on campus here at Wesleyan. The one for February for Black History Month, we have reached out to sororities, fraternities through the Red Cross and saying, hey, this is a good opportunity. If you want to do something for Black History Month, give the gift of life, give blood. And so we're going to be present. That's one of the things that the Equity Center does. We look at disparities across the board. We look at where there's a need across the board, awareness, education, where there's a need. And so, yes, when we talk about equity, we think about healthcare, we think about education. And so those are the things. There are moving parts. And then also for our campus, with our community partner, we're having an exhibition. It's going to be installed today. If not today, someday this week. The curator, Jeff Bruce, is bringing Showing the Way, which highlights the national Black leaders from Macon. And so I just want some of our students who are here living in this Middle Georgia area or from somewhere else to know that there are some people at the national level from Macon. And we talk about Ellen and William Craft. We talk about Henry McNeil Turner. You see, we talk about Scarborough. We're talking about people who they may not know about, but on our campus, they'll have opportunities to educate themselves, walk up to the exhibit and read, And so those are just ongoing things. The conversations that we have on our campus, the Lane Center hosts some of those. Dr. Doherty and I did. And you see what I'm saying? There are a lot of moving parts. What else are we doing, guys, in either on the campus or in the community, the center? I know we've shown up at, what was it we did in the fall, Dr. Doherty? I'm having a brain freeze. We were at it was an event that the Macon, something downtown.
Well, we were at the Pan-African Fest in May. And any of this is starting to collect names and talk about oral history projects that we're doing. But also, Dr. Miller and I, along with taking students to the Tubman, Y.O. Latimer, who's done a lot of work to commemorate and renovate Linwood Cemetery, took our students on a tour of Linwood Cemetery. And again, part of the goal here is to connect our students more to the community, connect Wesleyan more to the community, and become a support system for racial justice here.
Absolutely.
That's great. And then, this will be my last question because I got my morning meeting coming up soon. Why do you all feel it's important that we do everything that we can to remember Black history?
Well, I'll just start. I think about Black history all the time. I just do, because I just hear so many conflicting views about Black history as a month, as anything. And I know that back in the day when it was just a week and people were mad about that, then it became a month and people say, what's the shortest month of the year? And I'm like, it used to be a week, you know? And so I don't know. And so I just think it's not about where it's placed on our calendars that make it so important. It's understanding where the Black experience has come from and where we're headed. And so where we are now is part of that story. So whether we're talking about it in February, April, January, June, we're still talking about an ongoing experience. So to have a month or any time allocated just to focus on the past, understanding the history, understanding where we need to go from here, understanding what has been done and what else needs to be done, what do we need to know more about, and to just be aware of the need to keep pushing for social and racial justice across the board. It's just very important. I never stop thinking about it because I'm a part of it myself. And there are people who just care about the experience, because when we're just talking about the negative parts of our culture, that's problematic. If we're talking about just the achievements, that's problematic. We need to tell the whole story. That's why it's important to me. Tell all of it and be authentic, be real, and then do the work if there needs to be work done in any area.
Yeah, and if I might echo that, as a historian, I'm really passionate about, I'm a West African historian, and I study social history of West Africa through their food and their foodways. And I'm really passionate about the erasure of Africans in our collective United States history and the roles that they've played. And so one of my personal projects is to just highlight continually people of color and especially people of African descent in the creation of the world that we know today and the country that we love. And yeah, that's absolutely what we're all about, is that inclusion and that integration of those stories, so that it's not a segmented history. It's an American history, and we're all part of it. So.
Yeah, Dr. Miller said that beautifully. That this truly is this is America's history. This is not just one history or one narrative. It is a collective narrative, and it's important that our students in our community truly understand it.
Very, very well said. Well, thank you guys so much for your time this morning. I appreciate you. I'll definitely send you the article story once I get done with it. But I hope y'all have a great rest of your week, okay?
Thank you for your time.
All right, no problem at all. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.